All right, so let's talk about a new view or approach to cognitive development in middle childhood. So the information processing approaches and theories. So Piaget focused on decentration as the source of improved reasoning in middle childhood that we just talked about. Information processing theorists take a different approach. So they focus on changes in children's general mental processes. So specifically, we're going to look at memory, attention, and executive function. So the role of memory. First of all, we see increased speed and capacity of working memory. This is one of the focuses of information processing views. So children's speed of processing information seems to get faster as they get older. Also, their memory span seems to get larger over time, so they can hold more information at once. One example is if someone is presented with a set of numbers, how many of them can they actually recall? So 4 to 5-year-olds can recall about 4 digits. 9 to 10-year-olds can recall about up to 6 digits. And the adult level is recalling about 7 digits. That's like our maximum load of remembering digits in their order. So that paints a picture about the increased speed and capacity. We can see from 4 to 5 to 9 to 10 years old, there's a 2-digit increase there from 4 to 6. Also, there's an expanded knowledge base as they're getting older, of course. They're accumulating more life experience. So obviously, they're going to have a larger base of knowledge to draw from and make quicker connections, more advanced connections when they learn and process information. So it's going to impact how they relate to and remember new information, right? One experiment looked at 10-year-old chess experts compared to college student level chess novices. So we have 10-year-olds versus college students, but the 10-year-olds are pretty advanced at chess, playing chess. College students are novices, they're new to it. So the 10-year-old experts, they were far better than the college students, the college novices at remembering different positioning of chess pieces in the game. College students are obviously significantly older. They have more developed brains, but they were outperformed by these 10-year-olds. So this is one example that suggests that experience plays a large role. In this case, more so maybe than biological maturation. That's just one example of how the expanded knowledge base can play a role as well in memory. So with that said, we're going to do a quick memory exercise. I know this is an asynchronous video, but we're going to still follow through and do this task, okay? So on the next slide, I'm going to show you a series of images of objects. You're going to see this slide for only 15 seconds, and then I'm going to go away from the slide. I know this is a video, but let's refrain from cheating, all right, for the purpose of learning. So in whatever way that you see fit, you're going to try to memorize as many of the objects as possible. So whatever way you want to do that, you do it, but you only have 15 seconds. So afterwards, you're going to write down the names of all the objects that you can remember. And again, don't cheat. So right now, please just get a paper or pen or a blank document ready for this. But we will go ahead and start the timer and show the slide in a second. So you're going to try to memorize as many as you can in 15 seconds. All right, let's go. Okay, 15 seconds are up. So now I'm going to ask you to pause this lecture video and do these tasks. So you're going to, on a piece of paper or a blank document, write down the names of all the objects that you can remember. When you're finished, just think about strategy or strategies that you use to memorize these objects. So as it says here, pause the lecture video and do these tasks. All right, hopefully you paused. We're going to come back to this. So let's go back to this image now. So look at it and look at what you wrote down. How many did you actually get? So maybe make like a little mental note of the total you got right. But also just think about the strategies you used. This relates directly to our next topic. So think about what strategies did you use to memorize these? So going back to lecture discussion, we previously talked about encoding strategies, going back to that model of memory that we learned about. So we talked about encoding strategies, ways to move information into our long-term memory, some sort of memory strategy. Strategies that are more poor or weak, you're going to be less likely to recall the information later. More effective strategies, more meaningful strategies, you're going to be more likely to recall or retrieve the information later. This is all a recap. So there seems to be a significant increase in encoding strategies or memory strategies as kids progress into middle childhood. Some big ones are the three that you see here. And perhaps you used one or more of these in that last task. So rehearsal would be the first one. Now, if we go up to this little bubble here, this would be an example of rehearsal. It's simply rehearsing or repeating the material that you're trying to remember. So maybe like a phone number. Maybe, to remember a phone number when we were younger, back in the day when you had to remember things in that old fashioned, maybe you rehearsed it. Maybe you just said it over and over. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Held it in your short-term memory until you can get it down on a piece of paper, whatever it might have been. In the activity we just did, maybe this was one of your strategies. Maybe you just went straight to listing off what you see. Horse, flower, bike, whatever it might have been. Maybe you did it in order, out of order, but that could have been maybe a strategy you used. So that's more basic strategy that is used for memory. We also have organizational strategies. So this includes things like categorization. So what this is just mentally grouping information into meaningful clusters or categories of associated items. The idea is that if you remember only one part of a cluster, the rest of the information will come to mind by association. So if children are shown a large number of objects or words and asked to remember them, 7 to 8-year-old children are more likely than younger children to group items into easy to remember categories. For example, they might link words according to categories like animals, cat, dog, horse, like we see in this bubble, foods like cereal, milk, bananas. Older kids, 7 to 8 or older, were more likely to do this than younger kids. And maybe this is one of the strategies you use. I intentionally put some certain categories in there. I put, some animals, some forms of transportation. I'm already forgetting. Let's go back and look. Natural items like tree, flower. I put this bee here, so maybe you associated this with animals, or maybe you associated it with flowers and trees. So it's going to depend how you mentally categorize and wanted to organize things. And then, of course, the instrumental category. So maybe that's how you approach this. That would be an organizational strategy. So it's enhancing the ability to store and retrieve information systematically. Lastly, we have something called elaboration. So this is identifying or making up connections between two or more things that you have to remember. So this is arguably one of the more complex strategies, but also a very meaningful one that yields good results with retrieval typically. So a typical study with kids, they'll be presented pairs of words, and then they're asked to remember the second word when they hear the first word. So they have to start making associations between two unrelated words. For example, maybe they're asked to remember the word street after hearing the word tomato. They have to somehow remember the association. So when they hear the word street, they got to associate with tomato. Kind of really unrelated things, right? So what do? You can't really form a category with these things. So what they might do is visualize a tomato being squashed in the middle of a street. They're almost creating a mental image or a story even, especially if we have a lot of things on the screen like you all did. And maybe this is one of the things you did to remember. Maybe you created like a story out of the things that you saw, created a sentence using the items that you saw. That would be elaboration. Pretty complex stuff here. So school age children continue getting more and more skilled at using these memory strategies. They also can think about memory. So meta memory. Not only do older kids know and remember more about the world in general than younger kids, but they're also more likely to know more about memory itself. So meta memory is a form of metacognition. Children start understanding the limitations of their own memory as they get older. For example, when children are shown a set of 10 pictures, similar to the one we just saw, ours was, I think, 12, but they're shown a set of a lot of pictures, 10, and they're asked if they can remember them all. 5-year-olds claimed that they could right off the bat. They would announce very confidently that they were ready to partake in this task right away and they could totally do it. They could totally remember these 10 pictures. Most 8-year-olds weren't the same. So they acknowledged they couldn't. They thought about the situation and realized that they probably couldn't realistically do this task. So they requested to study the materials and then test themselves before even attempting it. So younger children tend to be overly confident in their abilities, which suggests that they don't have the capacity to correctly evaluate the effort and the ability needed to complete certain memory tasks. So middle childhood is when kids seem to gain a better grasp of meta memory. So I think that's where we'll end this video. We've gone on a while. We do have one more half of information processing. So thank you for partaking in that activity and making connections to these things in terms of the role of memory. But we have a couple more stops here. So thanks for joining and I will see you in the next part.